Not only can you take a load, you can take the ultimate load, and even better than that, that you find your true calling and destiny in your willingness to take the ultimate load.
Okay.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive through any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Support this project at eplex.store or patreon.com/Echoplex, or just go to our website, Echoplex Media, click the support tab and find other ways to support us. And tell your friends, tell a friend. I'm producer Dave, and I can be found on Grindr. Matt's back on the show. What's up, Matt?
Hey, I'm historian Matt. I'm here. I thought I would join, especially since I suggested this video that is going to hurt all of our brains in a minute. Yeah, you can find me in places, but I'm on the How the Tech Are You, our weekly tech news show. Check that out. And also I got a new channel. It's kind of new, but it's been around a while, but we haven't released many videos yet as we're kind of working up on it. But it's called The Power of Money. It's about finance and money and economics and all that good stuff and the history of it. There's a lot of history involved. So yeah, who do I hand it off to?
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social, and you can also find me on How the Tech Are You on YouTube.
And
here.
And you're the voice of The Power of Money.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I also do the voiceover for The Power of Money.
Oh, you do the voiceover for Power of Money. That's right. That's fantastic. I kind of forgot about that. Well, okay, everybody. So
trying to grow my voiceover cred.
All right, we have a full house here tonight. We're gonna try to not step on everybody too much, but we don't do a lot of live shows together, the three of us. So just bear with us a little bit if there's a little bit more crosstalk than usual. I'll try not to throw a fit if there's crosstalk. I promise. So Matt did suggest this to me. Speaking of finance and tech, these are some finance bros. The one Graham particularly seems to have caught the ire of not just CoffeeZilla, but also seems like maybe he caught the ire of Legal Eagle as well recently. So it seems like things aren't going to be going so good for this guy going forward. But I mean, he's got plenty of money, so it's not like anything actually fucking bad is going to happen to him. I think he has so much damn money now that he could just quit and live the rest of his life. So this is the Iced Coffee Hour with one Mr. Beef and Benzos, incel Ron Hubbard himself, Jordan Peterson.
Which I looked at the trailers. It looks amazing.
They're nice, eh?
Yeah. Yes, the production quality. It's like I look at that and I'm inspired. I'm
Oh, that was Jonathan Pageau, the guy who believes in literal demons.
So we jumped ahead in the start. So he's talking about his new like online course that Jordan Peterson is, or this is like the intro to it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the Peterson Academy. It's a I don't know. It looks like it's held the most terrifying white room in the world.
Right? What is this room? And everyone's sitting in these like everyone's sitting in these like plastic like what do you call them? The stackable chairs, the plastic stackable chairs.
Yeah, no desk.
This seems horrifying.
Yeah, doesn't seem great. I hope that's not what going to his thing is like. Because again, I mean, I'd be like, am I dead? This better not be heaven.
I think it's online.
production quality like that
That's
for our
right.
show.
Up your game, man.
So during our research, we found a video of you where someone asked you about IQ, and you said you were previously tested quite a while ago, and you said it was in excess of 150. Granted, it does decline as you age. And you also said having a high IQ like that means that you have high volatility or variance in other areas of intelligence.
As intelligence
We're
increases,
starting off hot.
Yeah, they're already starting off fucking with the calipers. Great.
Also, IQ is not supposed to change when you age as you get older because you're compared against other people your same age. So it should stay pretty much the same.
Well, and also like, I don't know. Who knows? Like, did he just taking one of those weird fucking online IQ tests? I mean, what is he talking?
Yeah.
I don't. Fuck it.
Besides the fact that we have no idea if IQ actually measures anything, but yeah.
Also, what does in excess of 150 mean? That could mean 151, or it could mean like 267.
Right.
That's true.
I get the impression that maybe he didn't take any such test.
I think he picked that number because like 150 is supposed to be the cutoff for like genius, if you believe in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he's starting off basically claiming he's a genius.
I mean, I feel like the guy is probably like what I would consider smart. I wouldn't really call him like he's not knowledgeable. He's in fact incredibly ignorant, like surprisingly ignorant, but sure, he's smart. Like I could believe that his IQ would be around there, but like literally that doesn't matter at all.
Right. And again, we've been over and over and over on this, but this is like it's a measure of how well you do on the IQ test that particular day. That's what it measures, right? Like it's not like somebody followed this guy around for a while and took notes on his ability to adapt and solve new problems, right?
Yep.
Oh God, what a horrible job that would be.
intelligence increases. So psychometrically, there's sort of one way to be not very bright and a variety of ways to be very bright. So there's differentiation at the upper end.
There's only one way to be not very bright. What? No,
I'm not particularly gifted mathematically, so I struggled with statistics. I eventually figured it out, but it certainly didn't come to me easily. I don't tend to think
That could explain a lot of
I
things.
certainly had students who were like immeasurably more intelligent than me on the mathematical front. I had a student at Harvard. She went from 0 statistics to winning teaching awards for teaching it in about 6 months. She was a little autistic. She was
What
also
the
a
fuck?
writer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that.
Like any of this, this person, I hope this person doesn't exist because he was probably not a very good mentor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes, dude. Yikes.
Yep.
That's a rare combination to have that extreme spatial mathematical intelligence and extreme verbal intelligence. You get a person like that now and then, but it's pretty rare.
And she was just coded that way to be able to do that. That wasn't anything that she did to be able to learn quickly.
IQ is very biologically determined.
No, it's literally the result of a test on any given Tuesday.
So all of what we know about IQ says otherwise. Like if you just don't eat for a few days, your IQ, quote unquote, will absolutely fucking plummet.
Right?
Yeah,
Because
it's,
instead of thinking, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was going to say, we know that it's like heavily genetic, but that is not like what you think it means. I guess you could say like you also have to have all the other stuff. Like you have to be consuming enough calories to run your brain kind of thing, and sometimes even the right kind of calories, but that's another thing that's debatable. Like how much sleep did you get the night before? All those other things. There's lots of stuff that makes a big difference.
Are you stressed out about something? Are you fighting with your partner? Are you fighting with members of your family? Like HK said, if you haven't eaten in a couple days, you're not really thinking about the fucking problem. Now you're thinking about a fucking a pastrami on rye,
Yep. I guess also, probably the way I'd say it is like your maximum is possibly biologically determined. But your minimum is absolutely not. Like a lot of things will affect how well you do on that test.
Right. Well, I think when he specifically says, I think he said biological, but I think he very specifically means genetic, right?
Right.
Which is a little bit different because biology includes other stuff and including stuff outside of your control.
And the other thing is when they talk about heritability, right? That just becomes those are factors outside of your genetics too. Like if it's heritable insofar as they say it is, it might be because your parents are very interested in education, and that is, what do they call it? Is that like epigenetic essentially is where it like is. Then I may be using the term incorrectly here, but where it's like forces other than just the genetic soup that turned you into yourself, but they're part of like your upbringing and stuff. It's all really complicated, and the main problem here is that this notion that we can give someone just a series of tests next Tuesday and determine how smart they are is just absolutely fucking bug fuck.
Yeah. So of course he's going to go on for that for a while. But I also want to point out, just for funds, I think we've shown the videos from the Iced Coffee Hour multiple times on this show, right? Well, notice, Jordan Peterson is dressed up in his suit and tie and being a little flamboyant there. You also notice that both Graham and Jack, who are the interviewers, are also dressed up in like suits. I think Graham doesn't have a tie, but I think Jack does. And they like never do that.
Maybe they're mirroring?
Something like that.
It's very rough. It's no wonder. My student and I, Daniel Higgins, who is a partner of mine in business still, we, at Harvard in the 1990s, we did a lot of work investigating the world of psychometric measurement. So that would be the assessment of cognitive ability and personality. And we delved very deeply into the literature on neuropsychological function. And so that's from a field that basically derived its information from animal experimental studies as well as study of human beings with various forms of brain damage. There was an effort. I don't know if
Graham is dressed like he's trying to sell us a timeshare, Matt.
still ongoing to develop tests that would be associated, where people would show decrements that were associated with known.
I mean, to be fair, Jordan is dressed like he's going to show us his chocolate factory.
Yeah, usually he's a pretty snappy dresser, but I don't like this suit. I don't like this suit.
My student and I, on my old supervisor, we computerized a battery of so-called neuropsychological tests, and then we used them and IQ tests and personality to predict academic performance.
So wait, we used some program, I guess, that we fucking invented, and then we used unreliable IQ tests, and then I bet they use the Briggs-Myers fucking personality fucking test, probably. Jesus Christ. So like what we came up with was not so much data, but just like we'll call it result soup, right?
Yeah.
Yep. You don't measure the signal to noise ratio. You measure the noise to signal ratio.
Performance and like line worker performance, trying to figure out, well, two things. What exactly is it that makes someone productive depending on their positioning? And then also, how could that be measured effectively so that if you wanted to hire or place or promote, you could do that in the most effective possible manner. And so that meant that we had to thoroughly familiarize ourselves with the neuropsychological literature, which I already kind of knew, with the IQ.
Of course, I know everything, so I already knew that.
Personality literature. And so the basic claim of the psychometricians on the IQ side is that for all intents and purposes, IQ is relatively unitary. So intelligence, general cognitive ability.
So wait, IQ and the results of an IQ test are not a test of your intelligence or general cognitive ability. I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry. Like why are they still doing this? Like, this is like phrenology.
They're like an approximation.
It's a point in time measurement.
Yeah.
More than anything else. Like today, I'm kind of dragging ass. Like I'm a little bit tired. I didn't sleep super well last night, so I'm a dumbass today. Like, but like I don't know I don't know why he's talking about this. At least he's not talking about race and IQ. But we're only a couple minutes in, so
yeah, give him time.
Is multidimensional, but cognitive ability, although it differentiates at the upper end, is a pretty solid unit. And no one likes that idea. And no wonder. It's no wonder. So
I mean, I'm gonna have to like hard disagree on that too, because like unless he means something that like those words don't actually mean, but like your cognitive ability is not like either you have it or you don't. Like I know plenty of people who are like extremely intelligent in a number of ways, but like absolutely hopeless in others, myself included. Like I'm super like good at like writing code and like doing logic, but like I can't like draw perspective at all. I'm so bad at drawing perspective. Yeah. That's just a thing my brain can't do. And he probably doesn't mean intelligence in that way, or like whatever he said, mental whatever. But like artistic ability is absolutely like a cognitive ability, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And you know, like many other things, the other factor in artistic ability is practice. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, I've practiced tons. I just can't do perspective. But my brain just doesn't work that way.
I guarantee I wasn't talking about you. But
Sure,
I mean, people who are professional artists are maybe they may be gifted in some ways in that, but boy do they also gain a lot of ability in the arts through experience, just like you do in coding and other people do in other things that they're good at.
Yeah, so like unless he's using those words in just like ways that aren't like the way you would use them according to their dictionary definition, like he's just wrong in this.
Very unfair and anti-egalitarian to note that there's wide variation in the trait that is the best predictor of long-term success in complex occupations. It's not like the cards are dealt out equally. They're not dealt out equally.
How much of that is genetic?
Most of it.
So if you have smart parents, you're probably going to be smart.
Parents, you're going to be slightly less smart than the average of your parents. Because imagine that your intelligence isn't determined only by your parents. It's
like, where'd you come up with that shit?
He talks about it. It's reversion to the mean as his general argument, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
If that were true, wouldn't we be like just rock stupid by now?
Right over.
If like every next generation is just a little dumber than the average of the previous one, wouldn't we be like drooling monkeys by now? I mean, we kind of are drooling monkeys, but you know what I mean.
Well, he also says, he's going to say it in a minute, I think, but the opposite is true, that if you have very low IQ parents, you should be a little bit higher IQ than them. I mean, basically, we all should be like...
Okay, I see what
middle
he
ground,
means.
all should be the same IQ by now, basically.
So in other words, you're probably more average, is what he's saying?
Yes.
Gosh, you know, it would take a genius to figure that out.
in a way, by the whole stream of your ancestry. Now, if you have two smart parents, on average, their ancestors are going to be slightly less smart than they are. So you get the best way to predict your IQ, if we didn't know anything else, would be to take the IQ of your mother and father and average them and then reduce it somewhat, because that's called regression towards the mean. So there's a tendency for biological forms to default.
Well, like that's not a good predictor because it's wrong almost most of the time. It's right most of the time, but it's wrong almost most of the time.
But I just don't know where he's even getting this information from. That's the problem here, right? Is that the argument is essentially just that it's not even an argument, right? He's just making a statement and sort of counting on the fact that people view him as some kind of an authority on these matters. And I don't know where the fuck this came from.
Yeah, I mean, he's not citing any studies or anything, and he just previously said he was really bad at statistics. So, I don't know.
I mean, apparently, if he thinks that something that's like barely above random chance is a good indicator, then yeah, he's probably bad at statistics.
Yeah. And then on top of that, he just says you're a little bit less. Like, he doesn't actually say like how much, or even give like a ballpark of how much, like different, but it's not, I doubt there's any study or something that supports that. I think he's just kind of making this up.
So I think the other problem here is that, and I could be wrong, but I think there's probably just not a lot of modern study being done on the results of IQ tests.
Yeah.
So, like any of this information he has is probably either old or outdated, or he's just fucking making it up. Because I don't think that this is really that they're being used. Like I think that after all the shit around the bell curve, I think that academia in large part kind of left it behind.
Yep.
And good.
I mean, you could say odds are your IQ is within a standard deviation or two from the mean.
Yeah. Biological forms to default back to their standard configuration.
See, I'm also a genius. I can figure out something that everyone else can too.
Regression towards the mean. So there's a tendency for biological forms to default back to their standard configuration.
Or increase it if the average was lower than.
Yeah, that's right. So if you had two parents who were impaired in their cognitive ability or far below average, on average, you'd be smarter than they were.
Would that then suggest that with enough time, we're all going to be about even if everyone's kind of...
The average is IQ. The average is 100.
Mm-hmm.
So
hasn't it been going up over time?
Wait,
there's debate about
that's the definition of 100 in IQ tests. The average is 100? No, 100 is the average. It goes the other way.
Right, and
you test everyone and you take their average score and you say that's what 100 is. You don't start by doing the test and then figure out, oh, it just so happens everyone averaged out to 100. How odd, how perfectly strange and weird.
It's literally grading on a curve.
Yes. Yeah, like that's the definition of, like, that's how the IQ test is calibrated. So no, we won't all approach average. Like, the average IQ is always going to be 100 because by definition, but like, people are getting smarter. People now are smarter than they were 100 years ago, even though now the average IQ is 100 and 100 years ago the average IQ was 100. It's just that's like, IQ is also like temporally valid. Like, it's only valid within, like, not only the time you take the test, but like the time the test is given,
Yeah, because if everybody but you falls on their head a bunch of times,
all of a sudden you're really smart.
Yeah.
It's gone up over time in some ways, for sure. So although it's difficult to increase IQ, you get...
Was that a PragerU graph?
Who pop up.
That's not... That graph doesn't make sense. The average IQ should be flat at 100. From all the way into the past to all the way into the future, the average IQ should be flat at 100. Because by definition, that's what IQ is.
Yeah, but I think what's happening is if you add in the cohort of the older group, and your current one, and then now find the new average, that's then you could argue that more recent, people who are born more recently have a higher IQ, if that makes sense.
Right, but also it could be like the people are just getting better at taking tests too.
Well, no, from what I heard, the actual reason this is supposedly happening is because we get a lot better nutrition in terms of number of calories. It's arguable whether or not it's appropriate number of calories, but there was a huge increase in IQ, and that's kind of leveling off because most of us are actually getting our required amount of calories.
Okay. I do want to stress the point, though, that the average IQ is not increasing. It is by definition always 100.
No,
people are becoming more intelligent.
We've been over this like 3 times now. Also, the only other, this is just the result of a test that somebody takes one day. That's the most important thing to understand here. Actually, I think it's like dumb. It's dumb.
In theory,
the test that measures whether or not you're smart is actually a dumb test.
Cognitive function. There's zero evidence for that. There's no. What happens if you practice a complex task? You tend to get much better at the complex task, say a video game, but it doesn't transfer over and make you generally smarter. No one's figured out how to increase IQ with cognitive exercises. You could maintain or increase
with cognitive. Okay.
With exercise, cardiovascular and weightlifting, because your brain is a very demanding organ. So if your cardiovascular system is healthy, especially as you age, that's a huge deal. There's nothing that you can do that's more important than staying in physical shape to maintain your cognitive ability. So, but nobody knows how to.
Getting enough food probably would be more important. Like if you're starving, you're not going to be smart.
But also, like, this is the problem here is like the kinds of people who have the ability to like consistently go to the gym are going to be of like a higher socioeconomic class generally, or the people who have the free time to exercise at all or whatever. Also, it's gonna track with like socioeconomic status generally, and so that just there's too much to control for here, honestly. Like. And that's why I think the social sciences have largely left the idea that this one set of standardized tests is going to tell you how smart somebody is. They've left that behind because it's just really, really hard to control for other factors to even figure out what the fuck's going on. Plus, the test itself is, like, historically has been pretty biased. And, the fact that we look back on the tests from the 50s and 60s and find, that's a little bit biased. You think in the future we're not going to look back on fucking standardized tests from today and be like, oh shit, there was a whole bunch of bias in these tests? Of course we are. So like it's all fucked up. It's all fucked up and it's all really stupid. And it's really funny that it's really stupid the way that we decide whether or not you're smart.
Yep. To his point, though, he did say something that was like bordering on the right answer. He said that the brain is cardiovascularly very hungry, like it's hungry for blood, but like he didn't really understand why. It's hungry for blood because it's actually hungry for food too. Like it needs a lot of calories, and if you're not eating enough calories to keep your brain working at its full capacity, like your brain won't work at its full capacity, so like your caloric intake really does have like a substantial effect on how well you would do on an IQ test or any test, really any test that like you need to use your brain to do.
I mean, we all understand this kind of intuitively too. Like, you're kind of dragging ass at, some task you're doing or whatever. And you're like, fuck, you know what? I haven't eaten anything today. And then you go eat something, and then you go eat something, and then you're kind of back with it. You're like, you feel better, you feel more focused, you're better at the task you're doing. If it's like fucking cognitively challenging, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, Snickers made that whole series of commercials basically about that point of like sneaking off to eat a Snickers bar and you're like back to your normal self.
And you don't strangle your boss or whatever.
Yeah.
The discovery of infinite value, but no one's figured it out. You can suppress IQ quite easily by
a baseball bat,
not stimulating young children to the degree that their intelligence has room to play, let's say, or by not breastfeeding them. That's a good way to have stupider children, if that's what you're after. Breastfeeding confers, I think, something like a 3 to 4 point increment 1 year.
But again, this is another thing where you're not going to be able to, you have to like control for so much other stuff because like this is going to be, again, correlated with socioeconomic status.
Yep. Yeah, it's correlated with like people who can stay home and breastfeed their child all the time, and like not everyone can do that, and like also not everyone can even breastfeed at all, like, and formula is fine. Like I don't believe that the root cause of this study of like breastfeeding being linked to higher IQ, like you said, I believe it's more closely like caused by socioeconomic status.
And all of the other factors then that go along with socioeconomic. I mean, now you're just out there. Now you're just out there in the fucking forest you're out there in the forest trying to count the leaves without even acknowledging that there are trees there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's bad. It's stupid.
I also want to point out that I probably missed it, but Peterson said that it was like 2 or 3 point difference or something like that. So we're not talking about a big difference in points if this is even a real issue. And of course, that could very easily be, I mean, socioeconomic status probably has causes much bigger difference in IQ.
And it's just, again, like you can, almost all the things he's mentioned map directly onto socioeconomic status, except for the genetics. But that's probably just because these people are eugenicists, right? Like, that's probably what the reason that he wants that to be or whatever, you know?
Something like Why is that? Is it just the bond?
Nutrition. The brain's a very demanding organ. And so it uses a tremendous amount of your metabolic resource.
So this doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't formula give you enough nutrition?
Go ahead. It's clearly like not the breast milk. It could also be something about the touch, the intimacy, the spending, you know, but again, people who have money can do that. So there's just so much to control. There's like so much that it would be like literally impossible to control for here.
Yeah.
Yep. Or unethical to control for.
Oh yeah, I guess you could actually, but you would be doing literal eugenics experiments, which I suppose maybe Jordy Pete's like, well, we should do more of that.
Nutrition and exercise make a huge difference.
I wonder though, like, have you kind of noticed that like billionaires tend to be incredibly ignorant? I wonder if this has anything to do with it. Like, if there's a certain point where, like, you know, you're too rich. You have too many resources to become a well-rounded, intelligent person as an adult.
Right, but that's the adult. Like, the children of those people are just going to have the best of everything, and if they grow up to not be fucking weird money perverts, they'll probably, you know, have, you know, all the advantages in the world in education and all that.
I'm thinking of a particular billionaire when I say that, so yeah, maybe that's a sampling bias.
Tremendous amount of your metabolic resources. And so nutrition and exercise make a huge difference. So if you asked about biological determinism with regards to IQ. So imagine that you take identical twins who were separated at birth, and then you track their IQ as they age. Well, by the time they're 60, their IQs are so similar, regardless of their background, that it's as if you're testing the same person twice. So strangely enough, if IQ is environmentally determined, you'd expect twins separated at birth to diverge as they age. They don't, they converge. So
I can see
but the question I have about that is how many long-term studies have we done that, first of all, how many twins get separated at birth? And then how many of them are both still alive at 60? And then how many of them are like involved in this kind of study for basically their entire life? What the fuck is he talking about? You're going to have a sample size of like nobody by the time we get done with this.
Yeah. And probably that's more along the lines of like, they would probably end up closer to the same socioeconomic status, like we've been saying, later in life, even if they weren't in the beginning.
Right. It's so weird. Also, like, this guy on the left is clearly wearing his dad's suit, and I think that actually Graham's dressed like a Coke dealer. Not.
Oh my God, you're right. Look at how big the shoulders are.
Graham is definitely dressed like a villain from Burn Notice.
Very upset.
There's a whole bunch of reasons to be upset by it. I mean, when Daniel and I sorted this out in the 90s, we thought that this might be the shoal upon which Western culture demolishes itself, because IQ is a vicious predictor of long-term success. It's by far the best predictor. It's 5 times as powerful as conscientiousness.
Top psychologist, just one, not many, just one.
That's a good point.
just one. And this is from 2022. Also, like, I love when they do this where they don't tell you, like, they've hacked off the part where it's telling us what publication was this from. Good
point. Also, who is the top psychologist? Is this Jordan Peterson again?
There we go. Is this a circle? Is this some kind of circular thing that we're looking at here where it's like referring back to the person who's telling them the thing, right? There was I was watching Boston Legal, and there was this judge who gave this weird sentence to somebody, made them wear a shirt that said "I'm a slumlord" and hang out in front of their building. And as justification for it, he cited all these other like odd decisions and punishments that judges had issued in Massachusetts. But it turned out that all those punishments were actually issued by the judge who issued the fucking "I'm a slumlord" punishment. So it's like a self-licking ice cream cone or whatever, like referring back to oneself.
The next.
Also, I wonder though, like the article talked about, like, especially combined with these other traits. I wonder if those other traits are all having rich parents.
Right. Zip code.
He talks about another one, which it gets kind of funny, but I remember reading somewhere like about Mensa, which, you know, is like the genius club, right? That all the smart people are in, and they talk about like, well, the people who are in this club are from like all sorts of walks of life and, you know, levels of success and stuff. Like they go out of their way to say that the IQ does not relate to your success in life.
Right. And I cannot recommend enough Jamie Loftus's podcast series, My Year in Mensa. Very good. Very good. She had some stories about some fucking weird people. And there's another podcast called "Is This a Cult?" and they talked about Mensa. And so there's a lot of work out there, actually, research by, you know, podcasters and sociologists about Mensa and like what it's like and what kinds of like behaviors it like reinforces, and how it isn't actually, if you're real smart, it isn't great. It tends not to be great. Maybe you should maybe it's its own kind of cognition test. Like if you've scored high on the IQ but you're dumb enough to join Mensa, like maybe that says something about you too.
Predictor. So conscientiousness is associated with industriousness and orderliness. It's associated with political conservatism. It's associated with traditionalism. Outgroup, let's say skepticism towards outgroups to some degree. That's conservatism more. But, and we probably can't measure conscientiousness as accurately as we can measure IQ. We have to rely on personality scales and self-report and reports from other people. That's the best we've been able to manage, and no one has been able to.
Oh, that's right. Somebody in chat mentioned his personality test, and that's interesting. The comparisons I make between him and L. Ron Hubbard are useless, actually, now that he has his own fucking personality test that he gives to people.
So I want to point out, so he's talking about conscientiousness as like the other high predictor of success in life. And then, of course, it goes on to tell you why you can't actually measure that. So I don't know how he can say that conscientiousness is a predictor if you can't actually measure it. But beyond that, I don't know. I think it was Jonathan Haidt's book. I don't even remember what the name of it was, but he came out a while ago that tried to talk about the different kinds of values that like conservatives and liberals have. And if you read the book, it sounds like all the values that conservatives has are really bad, right?
Right.
Like he doesn't say that in the book, but like reading it really kind of sounds like it. But one of the things they kind of like latched onto, it's not really a value, but it's a trait that conservatives have is conscientiousness. And so there's been like this, it seems like there's been a push recently to try to say that conscientiousness is like this really important trait that you should have. Oh, and conservatives are this way. So conservatives are great.
So to be clear, when he says successful, he means having money, right?
Right. And
That seems to be the measure
Okay.
he's using. Yeah.
So like he would define Elon Musk as successful, whereas I would define Elon Musk as like pitiful and sad. And, like there's nothing in this world that could get me to trade places with Elon Musk.
ooh, if I could do it for a couple days, I would, because I'd really piss him off by fixing his relationship with his trans daughter and then just give him back his fucking life. And now he has to figure out, well, I don't know, do I burn this fucking down again, or what do I do here? Fuck, what happened? What happened to me? What happened to me? What happened to me? Why, where's my ketamine? Where's my ketamine? Because I wouldn't do it all. I'd flush all his fucking ketamine down the toilet too for him.
Practical test of conscientiousness. Like I've probably tried 50 things in my lab, bringing conscientious people into the lab, giving them different sorts of tests, seeing if we could figure out what activity conscientious people would do better in the lab, so we could use that as a measure. We could never do it. So we did things like, for example, imagine you have rows of N's, M's, U's, which are visually quite difficult to distinguish. Imagine a variety of rows of those, and then your job is to go through and circle all the N's. You'd think perhaps that would be associated with something like diligence or industriousness, conscientiousness, but it's just...
Maybe eyesight. It's associated with having really good eyesight.
Probably associated with the ability to read.
Right. I'm not sure that has anything to do with conscientiousness, but I could see that being the most infuriating. You go in, you're like, oh, I'm going to do a study at this university. And you go in and he's like, circle all the ends. And it's like an 8-point font on an entire piece of printer paper. And by the end of it, all you have is a headache and a fucking $50 check.
Yeah. Could I have access to the ASCII values of each letter?
It would be on a piece of paper. HK. It would be on a piece of paper.
And a regular expression.
It would be on a piece of paper, HK.
Okay.
IQ test. It's very, very hard to find a cognitive test that isn't just IQ. And IQ is very easy to measure. This is another thing that makes it troublesome, let's say, apart from the fact.
IQ is very easy to measure. Okay.
That's why the IQ test is like a day-long test they have to take.
I think that's
why it's changed so much, and it constantly changes.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy.
Like people with extreme IQs are so much more productive than people with on the lower end of the scale, that they're not in the same.
I've not not experienced that at all.
So he's also leaving out, is somebody a hard worker?
Yeah, that's very different than somebody who has a high IQ.
What exactly does it mean by productive? Because if I want a sandwich, I don't give a shit how smart the person making my sandwich is. Can they make a sandwich?
Right. Is it delicious?
Can they put meat and cheese and veggies on bread?
Certainly.
If I ask them and they give me a 45-minute lecture on the theory of sandwiches, I'm kind of going to be pissed off and hungry. So I'll do poor on the IQ test.
Right.
They're not in the same universe in a sense. And they're certainly in the same moral universe, and they have the same value intrinsically. And IQ is not associated with morality, let's say. Just because you're smarter doesn't mean you're a better person. And in fact, I think there's a temptation that comes along with intelligence that's Luciferian, and that's been forever.
Well, all right then. Let's go.
Interesting.
Let's party.
He just said that they were the same values, and now he's saying that they don't have the same values.
Hold on, everybody.
Because the vampires are getting hungry!
A Luciferian temptation. So Lucifer in the Bible, all he did was he wanted to explain truth to people. That's why he was so upset with God, right? Because God didn't want humans to know the truth. At least if you take the story of Genesis, if you take the serpent as the figure of Satan, of Lucifer.
Yeah.
I know that's not actually in the Bible, but it's how Christians interpret it.
The person who has been gifted by God, so to speak, with a great intellect, who believes that the world should bow at their feet in consequence, or presumes that their rational, what would you say, their cogitations produce systems of value that should be imposed upon the world. That's the Luciferian temptation.
What?
But there's a massive difference between people at the upper end of the cognitive distribution and people at the lower end. And so it's easy to measure. It's very robust. So for example, imagine you had a library of 10,000 questions. Questions about anything. They require abstract cognition to solve. That's the only criteria. Multiple choice questions, vocabulary questions, general knowledge questions, mathematical questions, spatial rotation questions, anything that requires...
Those require other things than those require specific knowledge that you have to learn. You can't give that test to a baby.
What about a really smart baby?
Boss baby?
That's boss baby.
Okay, so they have 10,000 questions. Extract out a random set of 100 questions, give that to 100 people, sum their scores, rank order them. That's IQ.
Well, no, you've already done fucked up, because what if somebody happens to get the 100 most difficult questions within, you know what I'm saying? Like, or if the questions that are given to somebody, like, no, this doesn't work at all, because like what the fuck is he talking about?
Yep.
I think what he's trying to say is like, there's a lot of tests you can give people that approximate IQ tests, like they're vaguely similar. Although he's saying it much more forcefully, like saying that it is the IQ test. It's not the IQ test, but
well, and the other thing is like, if you just declare that any test that measures your cognitive ability in some way is like an IQ test, then you've just declared that. Now that's the case. Boom.
Right.
It's because I said
test.
so. It's because I said so. Everybody. It's true because I said so, and I just said so. How do we know? Yes. Well, because I just said so. It's like what your parents do eventually when they get tired of arguing with you when you're a kid, but they're not doing that. Like they're just doing that because they're tired of arguing with you because you're being annoying, right? Like
technical IQ test correct for age, but that's irrelevant with regards to the measurement.
But before we get into that, we got to do some quick math, because the less money your business spends, the everything is by Oracle.
Financial meat from 5 businesses.
He said an IQ test corrects for age.
The cost of
I don't think it corrects for age. It puts you in the same, like it compares you against people in your same age group, right?
I mean, that would be I suppose that's a way to correct for, or like exclude age as a factor that would change it. But what's
so
next?
What does it mean to have an IQ over 150?
Oh no, we're still talking about IQ. Could we? I hate talking about IQ.
Most people probably.
Yeah, well, he's probably also a little on the manic side. Like, so there's a phenomena. One of the phenomena that's associated with creativity is known as fluency, and people who are fluent idea generators generate a lot of ideas. Now that can get out of control. It gets out of control in mania. And people like Musk, probably people like me, a lot of creative people, a lot of writers in particular, have a manic edge. And so they're being flooded with ideas constantly. So like this isn't quite so much the case for me anymore. Maybe it's a consequence of being older.
Or having your daughter attempt to kill you and scramble your brain in a fucking in a Russian fucking rehab center.
This would be a consequence.
Or just the drugs that he took.
More stable configuration. But when I was writing my first book, Maps of Meaning.
Oh, that book's way fucking crazier than fucking 12 Rules for Life. I mean, way crazier.
Yeah. When I wasn't,
it's got the Chaos Dragon in
research, let's say, which was kind of a break for me in many ways. I was thinking about that like 16 hours a day, nonstop, like ideas, a verbal stream of ideas associated. Were running through my head at high speed, constantly.
How are you ever?
Musk is gonna have that aspect. That's fluency so you can do a fluency test. Fluency tests are actually pretty straightforward too. So one of the ways of measuring fluency, for example, is I would say, well, write down as many 4-letter words that begin with the letter S in 3 minutes. So, or
you said it earlier. He is so much like L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm not the only one making the comparison, though. I do think I coined the term incel, Ron Hubbard. And shout out to the person who called the Cybertruck an incel Camino. Very nice. Very nice.
So is he going to say that, was it fluency? Since he just said it was easy to test, is he going to say every test is a fluency test now?
I don't know, but like the other thing is like, so if you're trying to think of as many 4-letter words that you can that start with S, I also just feel like there's ways in which personality traits other than what he's calling fluency are going to fucking play into that. And if you have to write them down, how quickly can you write legibly? Like how many words have you learned over the course of your life?
Well, yeah, that was the other thing. Like how big is your vocabulary basically? And as you said earlier, like you could have an high IQ, but not necessarily be really good in one or another subject.
Right. There's all kinds of factors here again that like are not just, are you like, I guess fluent though. I mean, I guess fluency would actually mean that you know a lot of words if you're talking about language, right? Because if you're fluent in any given language, you not only know a lot of the words, but you know how to put them together and stuff. That's what
is he using the word the way we're using it though?
I don't know.
No idea.
Okay. Because like he has a tendency to use words in incorrect ways.
Or in maybe sort of esoteric ways that might apply in some academic setting, but that normal people or like, normies, I suppose, don't understand those words in that way, which makes you a bad, if you're a science communicator, that makes you a real shitty science communicator.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you score that for pure fluency, you just score that for number of words generated. And if you do that with a typical group of 50 people, some people generate like 8 words and some people generate 300.
You know, who's generating 8 4-letter words that start with S in 3 minutes? I could do that in Spanish, motherfucker. And I'm not fluent in Spanish.
You can, there's other fluency tests that assess more creativity, which is associated with IQ, but creativity has an additional element, which is captured by the personality trait openness to experience. Creative people, so imagine that if you bring an idea to mind, there's some probability that an associated idea will come along for the ride. Mm-hmm. One thing reminds you of another.
Yes.
Okay, now imagine that you assessed 100 people and you gave each of them a prompt and they wrote down what came to mind. A lot of the things that were written down would be...
But isn't that like fucking free associating, like the fucking hippies and shit? So you just talk like... Yeah. That's what that sounds like, right? That was like a big thing that you would do in conversation pits in your living room in the 60s and 70s, was you would do free association. And that's fun if you're high.
It's like the predecessor to slam poetry.
Right. Oh, I would love... Jordan Peterson would suck at slam poetry.
And that's partly how we can understand each other. An idea means something similar to you that it means to me. The more creative people, though, are going to have other ideas come to mind that are more distal and statistically unlikely. So they make longer leaps, right? And that can degenerate into insanity as well, right? Because you can make leaps that are unwarranted or that are incomprehensible to other people. You see that.
But if you're doing an exercise where the person's asked to free associate, that has nothing to do with whether or not we would consider them sane, right? They're told to fucking freely associate in the exercise, and so that's what they're doing. They're putting their mind into that mode. So we would have there would be no way in which you could assess whether or not someone is quote unquote sane through this kind of exercise.
Yeah, like like you said, you're asking them to do it. So yeah, you're not going to glean any information about their sanity from that.
That's fucking stupid. This is all fucking stupid. Matt, thanks. I hate it.
You're welcome.
Where does confidence come in? Because I feel like you could be very smart but not take action on anything.
There's no technical definition of confidence. There's no psychometric definition. But confidence and self-esteem, which is also a very ill-defined phrase, they mostly load on trait neuroticism. So the first...
What?
The 2 of the main personality traits are associated with emotion. So people who experience more positive emotion or have a lower threshold for positive emotion, those are extroverts. And people have a lower threshold for negative emotion. So that'd be anxiety, grief, shame, pain. There's more, but that's the basic cluster. they're more likely to experience negative emotion on a regular basis. Plus, their threshold for experiencing it is lower. It takes less to act.
I mean, those are very different like things going on. I don't know. Like, I haven't looked at any studies, so we might be correct that those are like comorbidities, as they call them, or something like that. But actual like introversion, extroversion has nothing to do with those emotions, right?
I think he forgot what he was saying there because he didn't say that was an introverted person. He just listed off things that other people than extroverts.
And,
maybe.
and also like there's is one of those things again where there's differences between like what people would call introversion and extroversion in maybe a clinical or academic setting versus what the three of us might guess about someone if we're at like a cocktail party.
Yeah.
So there's, again, it's just like, which one is he talking about?
Yep.
Lower in neuroticism. Now, you could also add some extroversion to that, right? So the typical person that you would experience as hyperconfident would be low in neuroticism, so very free of anxiety, for example, and somewhat high in extroversion because that makes them outgoing. So they're not anxious, they're not inhibited. Anxiety freezes you.
Is that true? I think a lot of confident people are extremely anxious.
Well,
Donald Trump is insanely confident, and he is very anxious.
I think a lot of falsely confident people are extremely anxious.
Okay.
Right, but I think he might be right there. What?
Like con men.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're called con men, but that's because they get your confidence. They're not confident themselves,
right.
necessarily.
And again, we're again dealing with like sort of the differences, like confidence probably is pretty ill defined, right? Like it's sort of it's sort of one of those you know it when you see it things when you meet people. Yeah,
maybe. I mean, to me, it seems like it's just, as you said, low anxiety would be the big would be a close enough close definition. But yeah, but that's another thing that's a little hard to measure.
He likes to talk about a lot of moving targets as if they're standing still, it seems like.
Yeah, that is true.
It'll inhibit speech, for example. Extroverts are more fluent. So a confident person would be someone who's high in extroversion and low in neuroticism. Now, there's very...
Sorry, I'm going to disconnect and reconnect real quick.
I don't know what the heck he's talking about. And that's something that could be like confused, I feel like, for confidence, but I've known a lot of extroverts that are very not confident, right? But it's I don't think it really relates.
Still having trouble. I can't see Matt.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, can you hear Matt?
No.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Well, if anybody on the pod is having any questions as to whether or not this show is live, We're having some problems with that Video Ninja.
Matt's back.
Oh no!
All right. Fantastic. We should
Hunter's
continue.
back.
We should continue. We should continue to do the show.
My experience, a disagreeable person is more confident because a disagreeable person, that's another personality dimension. It's associated with femininity, as is neuroticism. A disagreeable person will tell you to go to hell. So you can have a quiet, disagreeable person who is pretty confident because they're going to say no to you.
I would like to know the studies here on this whole like disagreeableness is related to feminism. That sounds like a conservative line.
Yeah, it definitely
is probably not based in reality.
Yeah, I hear that. It sounds. I don't know, like what does he even mean by disagreeableness? Because I think it's also going to be like situationally based. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how much do you care about the thing you're talking about? Like, there's just a lot of, again, just going to be a lot of factors there to just, whereas you can I don't know if you can blanket describe someone as being fairly disagreeable. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he means how human women are trained to behave in modern society and ancient society. Like just how human women are trained to behave, because like a tigress is not super agreeable. you ever seen them interacting with a male tiger?
They go to hell when they feel it's necessary, or maybe just randomly.
What was your disagreeability? Wasn't it?
It was extreme.
low.
My disagreeability.
It was very low. I think I remember it.
really.
So
we're
are
gonna
you,
put this
you're low in
forward.
agreeableness?
yeah.
It's feminine, is what he's saying.
No,
No,
low
that's the
agreeableness
opposite.
makes you masculine.
Yeah.
and you kind of look like that.
Oh.
Your face has got a kind
I was
of,
agreeable. So.
Yeah, Jack was the
I was
agreeable one.
okay. All right. Well, we don't
I
need to
was-
go into
I
agreeability.
was the disagreeable one, but
and
Yeah, but
femininity.
looks
but
like
that's why it worked so well between us. We
Yeah.
get along very well.
well, disagreeable people
Yeah.
are skeptical.
Yeah.
Their default position is like, yeah, I fucking doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't heard a lot of that from him in this conversation.
So an agreeable person is something like anything you want, dear.
Yeah.
Now the
Well, not that agreeable.
the
Almost.
upside of being agreeableness, as I said, is a more feminine trait. And the reason that agreeableness, it's useful in, it's likely useful in intimate family situations. And so a good default stance towards infants is agreeableness, right? Because an infant between the ages of 0 and 9 months is always right. Like if an infant is in distress, your job as a caregiver is to attend to the infant, not to make value judgments, not to be skeptical. It's like, and that's partly because human infants are so, we're born early because of our head size. So a mammal of our size should have a gestation period of 2 years, not 9 months. So human infants are born prematurely in a sense. And so they're
Wait,
very,
why? I'm skeptical of this mammal of our size should have a gestation period of 2 years.
That is true.
Okay.
I don't know about 2 years because like an elephant has a gestation period of 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
elephants
this more-
are, in case you didn't know, quite a bit larger than us.
Really? Isn't this more like was evolutionary psychology? It's not really debunked. It's just that so many people try to use it that aren't really trained to be psychologists at all and just misuse evolutionary psychology all over the place.
Possibly. Also, just like Evo Psych is like a big red flag, just more generally
Yes.
in the heterodox sort of space. There's perfectly reasonable people working in academia doing evolutionary psychology. I don't want it to come off like I think that they're all quacks, but it's like when it's an influencer, it should open up that third eye that the fucking conspiracy theorists say you have.
It's not unique to humans. There are other animals that are born in need of a lot of care. Baby birds come to mind. Like they need a lot of care when they're born or hatched. But you know, it's not unique to humans, and people kind of misunderstand what it means. You know, it's not like it's not like we're born absolutely helpless. Like we are helpless, but we're not like, we still have the ability to survive for a few hours as an infant without any interaction with an adult.
helpless. And so it's necessary to be very agreeable in their care because they're obviously, especially before they can move, they're 100% dependent. Now, the problem with that is that being agreeable isn't the best thing for dealing with children as they mature. And it's certainly not the thing that you use to deal with, let's say, adult males or institutions. I mean,
Why not?
Things that's pathologizing the world at the moment.
No. This right here, this shit about like this is some men are from Mars and women are from Venus bullshit.
Yeah.
This is some airport book bullshit. I think that the agreeableness probably comes from like enforced social norms more than anything else.
Yeah.
The man is the head of the household and all that shit. I think that's where the idea that women are more agreeable comes from. I think there may be something to what he's saying about being more, I don't know, able to put up with a screaming baby or whatever. Because like even before we had these social norms, there, you know, a man could still just take off and the woman was still pregnant. So like, okay. But I think this other stuff about like, oh, women are like agreeable at work and stuff. It's because they fucking, you know, both of you worked in Silicon Valley and you probably saw a lot of situations where women were just kind of talked down to and fucking treated like they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And you can either be agreeable to that or you can be fired.
Yep. Yeah, it is either like at that point, agreeableness, like you said, it becomes like a survival tactic at the job. And it also varies from like culture to culture. Like agreeableness in like American culture for women has like a different level and a different meaning than like agreeableness for, let's say, like the culture in Saudi Arabia,
right?
For
or
women,
even just Europe, it's a completely different. It's closer, I suppose, but yeah, or Japan, or this is all like stuff that it's hard to argue. It's like hard to argue that it's not simply just imposed by the societal structure and the you said like a defense mechanism, a survival mechanism. Yeah. Like because the men are, and the men to some extent are encouraged to be disagreeable, to shake things up.
Yep.
So
it is the proclivity of women to use agreeableness as their.
I'm not surprised too that Jordan Peterson doesn't know that, because like I said earlier, he is astoundingly ignorant.
Of women to use agreeableness as their default rule of moral presumption in situations where it's completely inappropriate. Disagreeable managers are more successful than agreeable managers because they can't be taken advantage of. That's the problem with being agreeable. Then also
well, wait a minute. No, isn't a good manager just if we're like a proper mix of agreeableness and disagreeableness? Like wouldn't a good manager know when to go along to get along with their staff, even if they think maybe this isn't exactly the right way to go, because maybe they believe that they've hired competent people that are under them, and maybe those people know some shit. And then sometimes you got to be disagreeable. Like it's just like it's all situational based. And I'm guessing the best managers are probably, and not these are not the only traits or whatever, but they're a mix of these two things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you would have to be to work with other people effectively. Otherwise, like if you're just, because we call the managers who are disagreeable all the time. You're like, they're a dick.
Yeah. I've certainly had managers that were like extremely disagreeable, and I was, as an employee underneath them, I was unproductive in that environment. And I've had managers that were much less, disagreeable, much more agreeable, and I was much more productive under them, as were most of my colleagues in the same, team. Basically, the manager oftentimes has a very direct impact on the productivity of the team, and like you said, it's like it's a good mixture of the two that will make the maximum productivity.
Right, to the extent that we could even like measure that too, because productivity in one environment may not even be the same as the goal of productivity in a completely different environment. So it all just depends. But this is really weird too, because then you extrapolate from this that men are less disagreeable than women, therefore men are better managers, right? Like if you
because if you're agreeable. And
I do agree that society teaches men to be, quote, better managers, unquote. And by that, I mean the kind of managers that upper management likes to hire.
Self out in others' care constantly, then it's easy to feel that you're not being appreciated properly. And perhaps you're not necessarily that good at bargaining on your own behalf. Now, if you're disagreeable, you can also be a complete son of a, it's like, all of the personality dimensions have their pathologies, especially at the extremes. And you can't say one is better than the other. If you're a sophisticated actor, what you do with your personality over time is you expand its range so that you can match your behavior to the demands of the current situation. So disagreeable people, they tend to say no. They're very skeptical, so they can miss opportunities. They're suspicious of people. And, that's real useful if the person you're suspicious of is a bad actor. But it's not that helpful if the person isn't. Mm-hmm. So you pay a price. You pay a price for everything you have, right? It's in one way or another.
One of the most transformative messages that you put out is the importance of taking personal responsibility.
I don't know if whatever, he can say that. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Your coke dealing friend needs to do a little bit of that, by the way, Jack. Yeah, the guy on the right here and the dressed like a Miami, like either a coke dealer in Miami or one of the villains on Burn Notice. I forget the name of the bank now, Matt. What was the name of the bank again?
Yada Bank.
The bank crumbled and everybody lost their money, and this guy was like hella promoting the bank and like hasn't really said a whole too terribly much about it since all that happened. It might be because he's being sued. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he mentioned it in a video a long time ago or a while ago. Because this has been a thing that's gone for a while. I think even the CoffeeZilla episode was several months ago. But yeah, so he also invested in the bank himself. So not like a huge amount of his net worth, but he did invest in it, and that's why he was promoting it, because he had a financial interest, and he did say that he did have a financial interest. But the more I learned about this bank, the more, it sounded like a scam is not quite the right word, but not totally on the up and up.
Something can start out as not a scam and then end up being one when things get really bad for the fucking people at the top, Well, it sounded more to me like it was just a stupid idea that collapsed, The
biggest way possible. And in fact, on Rogan, you asked yourself, what is the meaning of life? And
he asked himself.
That it's the meaning that reveals itself when you take maximal responsibility for your own life. Could you discuss the philosophical...
Why did that strike you?
Because I think the meaning of life is a question that everyone asks themselves all of the time. And at different parts of time in your life, you're always coming to different...
Yeah, like when you're 20 in your fucking dorm room getting high.
That's right. I don't think people ask that to themselves all the time. Like every once
I can't even remember the last time I asked myself the meaning of life.
In fact, that's a big fucking red flag for me in a social situation. If somebody asks me like what I think the meaning of life is, I'm like, oh, look at the time. Like, oh, you just got here, man. I'm like, yeah, but I'm party hopping. All right.
And I thought that is
different wrong answers.
Sure, different wrong.
Well,
would you say this is a wrong answer?
I talked to a philosopher yesterday, and we were discussing...
Only Jordan B. Peterson knows the right answer to that question.
Visualizations of God. And there is a line of philosophical thinking now that is philosophers who are debating whether existence itself and hypothetically the spirit that gave rise to existence can be characterized as evil or good. Because if you look at the world, you could say, well, the amount of suffering outweighs the amount of pleasure. And so therefore, existence itself has questionable utility. That's what the antinatalists presume. That's
the antinatalists? Oh no, fucking straight up Nazi shit, dude. My God.
He's pronounced. He was a great, what would you say, hero to Karl Marx, the ultimate antinatalist. But it's a foolish way of conceptualizing the world, because
Karl Marx famously said, for our workers' revolution, you need to stop having babies so there won't be any workers for our workers' revolution.
Presumes that the right axis of evaluation is something like pleasure versus pain, like it's a hedonic evaluation. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it's true existentially. Partly, here's a reason.
I think he's still mad about the time that Matt Dillahunty fucking gave him the fucking giant boot on that stage. Because Matt Dillahunty, remember when he argued with him about like, pleasure is fucking, preferable to suffering or whatever, and Jordan Peterson just got hella mad at him for like suggesting that. I think this is a bit of a quote tweet.
Well, I just want to be happy. And first question is, what the hell do you mean by happy? Do you mean extroverted? Do you mean full of positive emotion? Do you mean you're not suffering? Do you mean you're calm?
Sure. Yes. All of those things. Sure. Yeah. You're getting there. You're getting there, friend, but you're acting like those are dumb things that, like, no, those seem like components to being generally happy, or at least contented.
Yeah. Well, he's also conflating extroversion again with an emotion.
Right.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense.
And again, we're going to use these terms colloquially or whatever. Like, I'm fairly, I guess, extroverted, but some of the happiest people I know kind of keep to themselves. All right. Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Yeah. He has like a very big bias against introverts. Like he really doesn't like introverts at all. It comes across on here.
And some of the most successful people I know keep to themselves too. Like my dad and my sister are both pretty successful in their given fields of scientific endeavor. And I mean, you know, they'll talk to you and shit, but they mostly fucking mind their own fucking business, keep to themselves, and spend time with their family. Like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. I know a lot of people who are like really successful who fucking keep to themselves, mind their own business, aren't really like extra gregarious or whatever when they go out, and they seem successful to me. They got a late model BMW. I mean, whatever. I hope they drive that thing responsibly. My God, good thing they're an introvert and not an extrovert, I suppose.
So it's very ill-defined term, but it's also not even obvious that is what you want. So what might you want instead?
You don't want to be happy. You don't even know what you want.
I mean, that's an interesting idea that you could be like, well, what would you do then if, the philosophical question would be like, okay, well, what do you do now that you're happy? Right? Well, you're like, I don't know. Fucking, I mean, I would just be like, well, I'm just going to go about the business of living my life now. Right?
Probably the same thing I would do if I was unhappy, I guess.
So this is like, get into philosophy a bit. It's about similar to what the Greeks talked about and the Stoics talked about, eudaimonia, which is more like, it's not really, doesn't mean like being happy. It's like the goal is not to, the goal of a lot of those philosophies is to reach eudaimonia, which is not really to mean you're happy, but is more akin to being content. Right. That makes sense. Because like happy is kind of a fleeting emotion. Something good can happen. You can be very happy, but that feeling goes away. And generally, or something's going on in your life or something like that, you can be very happy, but it's not a consistent emotion. But contentment can be more consistent.
Right. You could be content with the situation you find yourself in life, even if things aren't going so great, because you have a bit of perspective on, I've had a pretty good life. Things have been a little bit rough the last few months or whatever, but I'm all right. That's like a contentment, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to like, if you take enough heroin, you'll be happy for the rest of your life.
Oh, damn, HK. All right.
What memories can you draw on that, what would you say, situate you most effectively in existential space? So imagine that you're taking yourself apart with your conscience, wondering whether or not you're a worthwhile person, evaluating yourself morally. You don't look back in your past and ask yourself how often you were happy. Like that's
why wouldn't you?
What you do is you go over your.
I would like to live my life where I would look back and see a lot of times in my life where I was happy. What?
What the? Yeah. That's again the thing we said about being content. That's if you're having a fucking rough patch and you can look back on. You're like, well, for the most part, my life's been pretty happy and I've, had mostly good things. Like that's fucking contentment, right? You're again like, what the fuck, dude? Oh man, this is one of those, the only time is right now, people, but like that's true. But also like you still remember the shit that happened before. It's probably really helpful to remember that, like if you're going through a rough patch, probably really helpful to remember that just 6 months ago you were living a good life and fairly happy or content or whatever, and that your current situation is probably fleeting and you'll probably go back to the way that was. Like what the fuck? Also, I don't like sit around like deconstructing my fucking consciousness. Like I have fucking like I have not done LSD in a long time, all right, Jordan?
Biography, let's say, and you think about if you're trying to defend yourself from your own accusations, even, you think about those times where even under duress, you pushed the boulder successfully up the bloody hill. And the funny thing is that those situations without the difficulty wouldn't have the same impact. And so there is a much more...
But difficulty doesn't mean you're unhappy.
Right, you might be
like
really
he's
happy.
Conflating like hard work with unhappiness.
Right, you might be really happy because you're like, damn, I worked really hard on that and I did a great job.
Yeah, like I'm very happy when I put in a really long day's work and get a lot done. That makes me very happy, and I'm happy to do it too.
Yeah, I would argue though, when you're in the midst of doing something hard that you're putting a lot of effort in, you're not happy, but you're also not really unhappy. Like you're focused on the task. Like you're not really thinking about it. When you're done, you probably will be very happy. If
it's like
went well.
Neutral. At worst.
Yeah.
Life's utility than the hedonic evaluation, which I think is very primitive and pointless, because many difficult things cause suffering but are worth doing. Marriage does that. Children do that. Like any career that's...
Is his marriage just all suffering? Is he unhappy in his marriage?
That I don't know, and I actually don't care. I mean, I presume being married to him is some kind of hell on earth, but that's an entirely different question, right?
But he is
I feel like
if money, so
I don't have a whole lot of experience being married, but for the time that I have been married, I have been overwhelmingly happy in my marriage. And I'd imagine if I was not, that would be a problem.
You can't evaluate its utility on the basis of its happiness. That problem. The fact that we do that by default is nothing but an index of how pathological our culture is. We just assume axiomatically that the right evaluation, even for the quality of life, is the hedonic evaluation. That means we're basically hedonists. That's not a helpful orientation in the world. It's very immature.
Hedonism refers to the prioritization of pleasure in one's lifestyle, actions, or thoughts. That's a good place to stop this fucking thing.
I would say to Jordan, if he's unhappy in his marriage, he should really think about the possibilities going forward. He doesn't need to stay in an unhappy marriage.
So again, that's highly personal, and I'm not super comfortable evaluating the man's marriage, but I do, I would just imagine that being married to him is some kind of personal hell. I don't see where any of this is useful. And the way they described hedonism there was like the prioritization of pleasure in one's lifestyles, actions, or thoughts. Like that's just describing the human condition. Like we all do things that make us happy because they make us happy. I think hedonism is, at least again, like when we talk about it colloquially, like if you go, oh, that's that person, it was hedonistic, you probably assume you see a party, right? You see like conspicuous consumption, maybe of food or a drink or drugs. You picture maybe a rave or some kind of party or something. Like it's just like what you think of. You think of the hedonist to be the guy that has all the people feeding him grapes, right? That would be the hedonist. Which, by the way, is a great lifestyle if you can manage to get it.
I'm a little disappointed, but understand that I wish we could have gotten to the part where I don't know if it was Graham or Jack asked Jordan Peterson how he stays so humble, and the answer is pretty much what you would expect.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard sometimes to like. This is a long piece of content, and I'm really getting the feeling that I ain't watching the rest of this in red light. I can't sit through it.
That's fair.
But
We're 30 minutes in.
Humility is Jordan Peterson's specialty. He's actually in the running this year for the most humble man in the world.
That's right.
I predict he'll finish second.
I think the video does have time codes. It might be able to find it and jump ahead in red light or something. I don't know.
Maybe. But with that, I think I'm going to close the show out primarily because I didn't set things up correctly and I can't full screen HK. So again, everybody, this show's done live. So thanks for everybody on the pod for tuning into the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you're listening to the podcast and you're like, what are they talking about? What is red light? Well, you could go to eplex.store or patreon.com/Echoplex, sign up at the $5 a month level or higher, and in your inbox the day after the show records, you get the entire recording of the show. Sometimes it goes quite late. And with that, this would be Boomers by Periscope, and I will see. I've got to change the contents of my beverage and change the lighting in my studio. And I don't know. Hope the DNC thing ends soon so we can cop some viewers. This is Boomers by Periscope. We'll be back for Red Light.